When I first decided to do a character analysis of the first Captain America movie, I figured I would find a bland, feel-good hero movie with very little character depth. But as I watched, I was genuinely surprised at almost every turn. Every character had a level of complexity that I wasn't expecting. The plot was straightforward but engaging, and the story structure was remarkably coherent. It's not sophisticated or fancy writing, but it is coherent in a way that shows the writers care about their world and want it to come across as real, not just a set of events smashed together. The overall quality of the writing fits the story well. It's honest, straightforward, but meaningful in all the ways that matter. I do find it funny that even at a craft level, the writing reflects who Cap is. There are no tricks or hidden layers. Everyone speaks and acts exactly as they should. The movie works hard so that you care about what's going on. It doesn't take your intelligence or attention for granted. Every character plotline, and even down to the dialogue, has something that aids the story. And I could literally go scene for scene showing every writing decision that does that. Instead, we're going to talk about a few scenes and show at a micro scale what's going on here when it comes to writing. When I first approached this movie, I figured there would be things that they would just hand wave away. One of the things that struck me is most of the time we got good answers for things. And a perfect example of that is when Cap was turned into a stage showman instead of a soldier. I remembered that scene from when I watched it a long time ago, but I couldn't remember why that happened. It seemed weird to me that the military would put all this time and money into what's supposed to be a combat asset and then just turn them into a publicity stunt. I figured this would be one of those theme over writing issues where there's no real reason they would do it, but they need it for the story to happen the way they want it to. But no, to my shock, it is not only a logical outcome, but given everything in the story, it's actually the most logical one. You have Phillips, who never trusted the project, and especially not Steve. So Phillips trying to get rid of him makes perfect sense. And his first suggestion is literally turn him into a lab rat.
If you're going after Schmidt, I want in.
You're an experiment, you're going to Alamogordo.
The serum worked.
I asked for an army and all I got was you. You were not enough.
Something that Phillips would absolutely do to Steve, given everything we know about him. But the senator provides another alternative. And even the senator doesn't come out of nowhere. He's mentioned several times up to this point and has quite a bit of leverage over the project. And given his position, it would make sense for him to push for Cap to be used for messaging and PR. And on top of all this, Steve made quite the spectacle of himself and became a bit of a sensation to the public. So you put all this together and you get a very logical stage show Cap. That's not to say that everything is explained perfectly. There's another scene where, well, the writers make an interesting set of choices. I'm going to talk about a scene that has, well, a set of minor plot holes that reveals the intention and skills of the writer. We all know the scene where Cap single-handedly charges the Hydra base, fighting tooth and nail until he's finally captured. He's then brought to Red Skull and they have an important thematic conversation. Cap's team then bursts through the windows, guns a-blazing, rescuing Cap and beginning the assault on the base. Now this is a great scene, but I started wondering, why did Cap need to be captured? In fact, why did Cap need to do any of that? When I started working through the reasons, I really couldn't think of anything. Now maybe there's a specific reason for this, but logically speaking, without some unique factors that would justify it, this move makes no sense. In fact, the only explanation we get by the movie is this line from Cap.
So what are we supposed to do? It's not like we can just knock on the front door.
Why not? That's exactly what we're gonna do.
Yeah, that's literally all the movie gives us. You could say Cap's attack is a distraction. Except, no, not really. The assault comes a little after. Sure, you could say it was only a couple minutes, but that's more than enough time to resecure the facility. Also, this is a massive risk. These flamer guys could have just cooked Steve. Maybe they couldn't move their arms in. Poor guys. They really should redesign that suit if that's the case. The next argument you can make is that it would lull Hydra into being complacent since they captured the powerful thorn in their side known as Captain America. I mean, sure, yeah, it could make them more relaxed in a way, but they would know that Cap always works with a team. And on top of that, they would understand that the Americans not only knew where the base was, but were willing to assault it. More likely than not, it would put them on higher alert. They also conveniently take Cap to Schmidt's, office? Lab? Fancy closet with a window? I'm not sure. Now, this might not be exactly a huge leap in logic, but if they would have taken him to literally any other place, like say a holding cell, Cap would be in a lot of danger, which leads me to the final complaint I have of this scene. What about any of this operation couldn't have been done without Cap doing his one-man assault? They could have just smashed through the window and started the assault that way, which would be far more effective at taking the base off guard. All relatively minor issues, right? Well, yes, if you aren't like me and work through stories like I do, none of this is really an issue at all. Most audience members are just going to accept this is how it works, and since the rest of the film works very hard to make sure everything lines up, the film earns plenty of goodwill to bend the logic of the world a little bit. So why am I focusing so much on this then? Well, because it tells me the priorities of the writers. The writers had a problem to solve. They needed to have that conversation between Cap and Schmidt. It's the thematic backbone that shows what Cap represents and how he contrasts against Red Skull. Now there's lots of ways to do that, but it needed to be a situation where Cap is in legitimate danger, but ultimately needs to come out on top. They also needed to do this in a way that didn't degrade Schmidt's intelligence either. Schmidt would only allow this conversation to happen if he was confident in his safety, and him having captured Cap is a good way to lull him into feeling secure. So even though this assault doesn't make a lot of logical sense, the writers decided to bend the logic of the world just enough to maintain the intelligence, capabilities, and personalities of the characters, while allowing for an important thematic scene. This is one of the many reasons I like to look at what other people see as minor flaws. It often tells me what the writer is aware of. It often tells me about the capabilities of the writer and what the writer is aware of, whether or not these are conscious or not. And just as one little side note that I had to resist talking about during my character video, when the assault begins, all the soldiers just, well, do this. This is not how trained soldiers fight. Hollywood has this idea that soldiers just stand in the open and shoot their guns without ever considering, cover or basic tactics. But fine, it's still overall a great scene. Just need to turn off my brain a little bit. Would be nice to see Hollywood try a bit harder when it comes to trained professionals in almost any field. Anyway, another aspect I want to talk about is this movie's excellent usage of tone. Tone is one of those things that's often hard to describe unless you know what you're looking for. So the best way I can introduce this section is to compare it to another fantastic movie in the MCU, that being the first Iron Man. Iron Man is tonally very different from almost every other movie in the entire MCU. And usually, your best representation of tone is established in your first scene. And this is very true of Iron Man. It starts with a charming guy just having a normal conversation with normal people. The way they speak, emote, react. The dialogue may come across as simple, but it's well constructed for us to relate to them. These are people from our world, people we could imagine talking to day to day. It's shocking when the convoy is attacked and the soldiers are killed because they were relatable to us. And when we see Stark bleed, we understand that this is a grounded world with mortal characters. This is exceptionally well for establishing the stakes and, more importantly, tone of the movie. Stark is a mortal man in a brutal, realistic world. This is why his mini-arc reactor and ultimately his Iron Man suit stand out. They seem otherworldly in an otherwise real-seeming world. Captain America opens on something very different. In the first few moments, we already get this mythic setting. A man breaks into a crypt, speaks in riddles, and discusses power beyond human understanding. You have this old caretaker talking like a man that understands things that are not to be spoken aloud. It sets up the story as grand and supernatural rather than grounded. Both of these movies show fantastic understanding of setting up tone early to let you know exactly what's in store for the rest of the movie. Both these intros are not exactly complex, but they are very effective and efficient. In a couple minutes, we implicitly understand the world and the story. It is fantastic, controlled, purposeful writing. It surprised me just how well these early MCU movies handled tone. Both movies had a fantastic blend of serious and emotional moments, but knew exactly when to add some levity. In the other video, we talked about that time Steve smashed through the window, and this scene served three things at once, and one of those aspects was maintaining tone while adding levity. And it was doing something rather impressive. Just as a reminder, Steve was chasing down the spy that killed Dr. Erskine. But we have a moment here that allows the audience to relax just a little while not taking away the serious aspect of the scene. It's a nice simple nod to the audience that it's okay to smile a bit, maybe even laugh, without losing the seriousness of that scene. And that is a constant throughout the movie. It is a sign of good writing when you can maintain a serious tone while telling jokes to the audience. Now, the important aspect is that it needs to be funny to the audience and not necessarily to the characters. Perfect example is when Steve is infiltrating the first Hydra base and he jumps into a truck to find two guys just sitting there. And it's hard not to smile as we watch that moment. They do, however, present a threat to Steve. But again, we get this humorous shot of the truck rocking as one by one the men are thrown out. Perfect balance of tone, letting the audience laugh and smile, while in universe, that's not exactly a funny moment. In more, well, let's just say recent writing, there would be a quip here. Which, while quips can absolutely have purpose, they often signal that a character is just not taking something seriously. Something I feel a lot of writers don't seem to understand is that every choice a character makes, especially in a fight scene, shows what that character values. If they are taking time to make jokes while in a stressful situation, it shows the characters don't really care about the situation as much as they probably should. Again, you can make quips work, but they need to be used purposefully. However, it's become almost a formula to the point of missing what those quips actually serve, and it takes away from characters rather than informing them. This is a whole topic that I actually might need to do a dedicated video on one day. Speaking of characters, I do want to take a little bit of time and talk about them. Captain America does something that is actually pretty impressive with a relatively large cast. Everyone not only has a distinct personality with flaws and strengths, but they have a role to play in the story and in Cap's journey. My personal standout is Phillips. They easily could have made him the stereotypical military antagonist that's just incredibly cruel and uncaring, and would just always take the worst position no matter what just to make our hero look better. But no, he's not only a reasonable foil to Cap, but rather is often the voice of reason. His character is so effective because in a realistic world, he would be the correct one. The way he is written is perfect for showing that Cap's heroism has meaning. By Phillips being the logical, reasonable one, it elevates Cap to being a true hero in what would otherwise be a dark world. Also, Phillips just has so many great moments in this film, like that time he eats the steak that Dr. Zola thought was poisoned. Such a power play. Another sign of good writing is small but meaningful character beats like that. Bucky is also a fantastic character, and he's one that I unfortunately neglected a bit in my character breakdown. Bucky shows the human side of Steve, the man that knew him before he was Captain America. These were two men that cared for each other, but it was often Steve that was always being the one being rescued. But when Cap is given his power and works to save and protect Bucky, it proves that he is still the same man who cares about his friends. Without Bucky, Cap might have come across as more robotic. And when Bucky is killed, we see just how much that affects Cap, that he blames himself for failing to do the one thing that Bucky had always done for him. It brings this seemingly invincible man down to just being a grieving person, showing that at the end of the day, Cap is still human. And we talked about Carter in my other video, but I just want to take a moment and say how impressed I am with her character. She easily could have been written as just a love interest or as this perfect person who never struggled with anything. But they managed to avoid those two tropes and put her into this place where she's both extremely capable but also flawed. She's afraid of being vulnerable in a very human way, which is why she pushed herself to be as skillful and closed off as she was, never wanting to show weakness, and when she does, she gets hurt, showing that under everything, she also is just still human. That she needed Steve as much as he needed her. Between her and Pepper Potts, early Marvel love interests play important roles without overshadowing either hero. This is an element that I'm gonna have to pay attention to as we go through more Marvel movies. And before I close this video out, I want to tell a somewhat funny story. When I was uploading my analysis video to YouTube, I had a very difficult time getting it past the copyright checks. I was still learning what was okay and what wasn't, so I was doing lots of different upload tests. And all of them seem to have a thumbnail of characters in varying levels of distress, which very much matched my own feeling at the time. But then through the entire thing, Dr. Erskine seemed to show up in a lot of them and just was smiling, like he was personally encouraging me to keep going. Honestly, it was very comforting to me at the time. And the moment it picked was perfect. It's right after Steve jumped on the dummy grenade, and you just get this knowing smile from Erskine. Steve just left an impression on the normally cold Phillips, and Erskine knew that, knew the importance of that moment. And I think that moment represents the core of what this movie is. From the journeys of the characters all the way down to the very structure of the writing. It just wanted to tell a genuine story of what it means to be a hero and what it takes to get there. Showing that good doesn't have to speak for itself, but rather it is something that becomes clear to those willing to see it. It didn't take shortcuts, nor did it overcomplicate things. It's a simple movie about a simple man. And it's that aspect that makes this movie so genuinely moving, that you don't need to be fancy or complex to be good. I should probably wrap it up here. I really want to thank you for letting me ramble on for so long. I really just wanted an opportunity to talk about this movie some more. If you haven't watched it yet and it sounds interesting to you, please go check out my character analysis video. I go through the movie in a linear structure, breaking down the meanings of important scenes and why they work from a character standpoint, obviously. Anyway, I really appreciate you watching this video. It honestly means a lot to me. Thank you. Hopefully you got something out of it. Have a great day and take care.